G'day and welcome to another episode of the Andrew Price Podcast, the podcast for serious artists, which has not had an episode in about a month. Apologies for that. We've got a few guests lined up, which I'm excited for, but today's guest is none other than Bartosz. Okay, it's a Polish name. Apologies. Bartosz Domiczek. Okay. I've said it like 10 times with him and it's still, getting the words right. Anyways, Bartosz, if you haven't heard of him, is one of the most followed architectural visualization artists on Artstation. The best description for his art would be stylized utopia. Like this private retreat hidden amongst a desert canyons. Bartosz runs a small international architectural visualization studio in Poland, and he also runs a website called thecommonpoint.com, and they produce articles on a range of topics which you can't find anywhere else. So we get into all of that. We talk briefly about how Bartosz got started, and then we dive into AI of all places and talk about how AI can be used for your creative process, what are the areas in which it's likely to replicate and sort of, I guess, take artists' jobs in the future. A little bit of that. We also talk about the Metaverse and whether or not that is overhyped and underhyped, and virtual architecture, this sort of new space of architecture which is not designed to actually have people in, it's purely virtual. Maybe Metaverse architecture maybe is a better term for it. I don't know. But it's a very interesting and long-ranging discussion. So the links to everything we discuss, as well as Bartosz's portfolio, everything is in the description. So without further ado, let's get into the interview. Well, why don't we start, Bartosz, with sort of how you got started? Have you always been into art?
Yeah, like pretty much since I remember. As a child, I was doing all that stuff like drawing, painting, trying to make music, making movies or writing and that kind of stuff. And I guess it's like nothing really unusual for a child. But I didn't know for quite a long time what I would like to do in my life. And then what comes next is this kind of my origin story of sort. Is it where in my rebel years, I was like long-haired metalhead and hitchhiking a lot. And during one trip with my friend through the Balkans and Turkey, we decided to stay for a night in the cave in Turkey.
Okay.
And I ate something and I got sick there. And instead of one night, we stayed like 5 or 6 nights there. And I got, I was like half dead lying there in this cave. One day, even Turkish military came there with the rifles. So, I felt like totally delusional at the point. They asked me if I want to go to a hospital, and I declined. And somehow I got better in the end. But the message out of it is that I lost about 15 kilos during the time, and usually, just generally the entire trip was totally low budget, like $1 per day. So I was lacking all possible comforts. I was also living in the constant adventure, but the only thing that I was missing during the trip was the ability to just casually create something. And people when they are traveling and living in this constant adventure, they often get addicted to it, and in the end they need to spend their lives traveling and being in this constant drive, constant thrill. But for me it was like the realization that I should do something creative in my life, and then I decided to study architecture, which was like kind of a mix between doing something creative and being pragmatic at the same time. It wasn't like this far-fetched art that wouldn't find me a job. At least
right.
It was as I was thinking, but something more pragmatic. And it was also connected with this aspect of space, which was pretty important for me during the young time. Like, example, when I was a child, I didn't have dreams with people in them, like there were some people, usually mushy faces, silhouettes, but what I was really dreaming about were spaces, like being in some kind of intricate empty spaces, and I really digged it at that time. It was really strong, and it is still strong as a memory, and it kind of influenced me for my entire artistic life and what came after. Mm-hmm. So yeah, like early 20s, I was studying architecture, and that was when I was introduced to 3D, because before that I was mostly doing digital paintings, traditional art. So Photoshop was my
so you started with
my top software,
right? Okay, so you started in like 2D.
My first renderings.
Right.
My first renderings were totally Photoshop, like just everything painted, and slowly I was introducing these 3D elements, which is of course which was like much more efficient to do. So it was also a pragmatic choice, but I liked it from the very beginning. It was like this kind of a magic, just to do this wireframe scene and then hit the render and magic happens.
Yeah,
so,
nice.
I was kind of amazed by it at the time.
It is fun. Like I've been learning 2D myself, and it's amazing how much 2D artists put up with. Like it kind of like, as I'm drawing or I'm like sketching a character or something, which I've been doing for fun, it's like, I just want to be able to like move the light, like I've done all the shading, it looks good, I want to move the light or like change the perspective a little bit, and it's like, no, not allowed to. That's you have to redo the entire thing, and it's I can see why a lot of 2D artists are going like, oh wow, 3D, that opens up some doors.
Definitely. But I actually, like the first 3D software I encountered was Blender, and it was way before like late 90s. Yeah. My father, which was who was like a Linux geek, he was just looking for things that ran on Linux and found Blender, and I remember this pink monkey just rotating, and it was also mind blowing just to see, something contained in this box being rotated. So.
Oh wow, dude! Did you try Blender back then?
Not really. I was like, I don't know, 7 years old or something. So.
Oh wow! So this was a long time ago.
Way above my bar.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. So the first 3D software I tried was 3ds Max, and I kind of stuck with it because the entire Archviz environment is around it. But these days probably Blender is a good way to start. Also, right. Unreal.
Yeah. Well, maybe
I was starting.
We can sort of jump around a little bit there, but yeah, the Archviz industry is like predominantly Macs. In fact, you almost rarely meet anyone doing Archviz professionally that is not using Macs. Is that pretty fair to say, like today?
Yeah, I think so. Like at least 95% is all Macs.
Yeah. I mean, obviously there are. I mean, I'm part of the Blender Archviz Facebook group, and there's obviously an Unreal Engine
maybe
section.
Maybe there is also some
sort of early
cinema 4D crowd.
Okay.
Especially in Germany, I think it was pretty popular there as this Archviz visualization software for some reason. So I knew a lot of German architecture firms which were using Cinema 4D.
Okay, yeah.
So it's also kind of a niche, but yeah, predominantly 3ds Max.
And Unreal Engine is on the rise. And if so, why do you think that is?
Why it is? Because it's the future. So everybody can feel it. Yeah, everybody can feel it, but not everyone has time to jump into it yet. But
why do you think it's the future?
Able to. Because it has generally Epic has this, this people feel that they can get this support on the software that doesn't exist on 3ds Max anymore. Like the 3ds Max is a bit stale. Like from year to year, it's pretty flat line. Nothing really new happening. So of course Blender is on the rise. Also Unreal is on the rise. People can see that every few years they're getting something totally new, like unlimited scene in real time, and I think they can really feel it. That is something that maybe clients don't realize yet, but they will need it as soon they will realize that all the competition is using it.
Yeah, it's real time. Like I was thinking this the other day, like what are the, like in 5 years time, are there going to be more uses for real time, less uses, or about the same? It's more like if you had to poll the 3D community, I think everybody would agree that real time is it's at this tipping point, where real time used to be, there was so many trade-offs, like it just didn't look anything close to realistic. It was this really gamey, computer generated, just like wireframes almost, like that's where it started, and then it got a little bit of shading, but nothing close to reflections, all that kind of stuff. And now it's like, okay, there's definite, you hold up like a Corona render and then a Unreal Engine render, you can see very obvious differences, but it's close enough that the real-time advantage is enough for people to switch, Do you feel that?
Yeah, sure. And if you look at the polls, like CG Architect polls about rendering engines, it's like the first place is V-Ray, the second place is Corona, but then there is like the section of what we would like to introduce, and it's like 90% of Unreal
Engine. Yeah, I remember seeing that.
Introduce Unreal to today pipeline. And there are like examples. Recently, this Japanese railway station, and you have seen that. It's like you think it's cheating. It's a movie, but then it's like changing lights and skipping to clay render, and you can see it's totally 3D. So
exactly.
Yeah, and I think it's really good in out of the box tone mapping and this kind of stuff that adds this realism that it's sometimes it's hard to get in other renders.
Yeah, it's definitely an exciting space, I think. Although it is also for people that are coming from offline renderers to real time, there's a lot of messing about to try and make it optimized enough to run, but that's another discussion.
Yeah, but it's also, I think, a few years and it will be pretty seamless, I guess.
I think so, yeah. With the money that Epic's got, they're just developing it at a pace that other softwares can't really compete at,
Yeah, and at least a few years ago, there was like this scattered network of people that they gave their Epic grants to, and they were also developing chunks of software that was interesting. And now I see they kind of introduce it into this main segment of Unreal. So I think it's pretty clever how they do it.
Yeah.
So I think it's definitely a future. We'll see how it goes. If because they are growing in a kind of a behemoth. So what will happen when they consume everything there is to consume?
Yeah, that's the other one. You don't want it to dwarf everything else and there be no competition, because that's not good for everyone. Then you end up with just another Autodesk that doesn't develop year on year. But although I would say Max has come out with some They got that really good retopo tool now. Have you seen that? It's probably like the industry's best retopo.
Yeah, it's nice. It often doesn't work for me for some reason. But
Okay. I haven't used it, I must say. I just thought the what I've seen, it looks amazing. But okay, it's not like
I'm used
reliable.
to using ZBrush for all kinds of retopo and Dynamesh. It's like something fresh when coming from this strictly hard surface modeling software, and you get this ability to be fluid about your workflow, to not worry about holes in your topology or something like this, just having everything clean on every step. It is nice, so that's what I'm used to.
Got it. Well, actually, maybe that's a good sort of place to jump into. But what is well, first of all, you're looking at your portfolio, you've got lovely stylized pieces that do not exist, right? This sort of utopic, that famous one you did was the house in the Grand Canyon kind of looking one in the desert. There's a pool, and it looks amazing. Doesn't exist, I assume, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But you've also got a studio where you're doing professional works. So who are your clients? Like who are the people that like see this conceptual stuff and then go, I want to hire him for actual stuff?
So it's not always this way, and I would say there are 3 types of clients, and the first one is this typical Archviz client, so architect, developer, and client, like the guy that owns the building, something like this, and they often don't come for the quality, at least not high-end quality, but rather customer service, a quick turnaround, being able to create this kind of attractive, meaning punchy, contrasty, nice, uplifting images in a fast pace. So at the moment, for me, it's mostly doing biotech offices, like big glass boxes, and at the moment, biotech is on the rise. No
way! Biotech offices. Okay, as visualizations.
Like,
glass boxes.
especially after COVID, so a lot of
no way.
real estate, and they kind of shifted from typical office to biotech office. So they look exactly the same, but on some floors, instead of desks, they have these kind of mini labs with microscopes and stuff.
Okay.
And of course, these companies earned a lot of money last 2 years, so they are like building like crazy.
Whoa.
And at the moment, it's like, I think, maybe 70-80% of our this huge commercial Archviz work we're doing. And as I said, it doesn't need to be like top high-end quality. It's very important to have the right entourage. So the people dressed like this Google casual, so it's not too strict. It's something that fits the employees and the people that they would like to be their employees. So it has to be kind of casual.
Okay.
Also, the diversity should match the area where this building is going to be.
Okay. Yeah.
So this kind of stuff is important for them. And it's probably my least favorite kind of work, but it's also the money maker.
Yeah.
So
that seems to be a recurring theme across a lot of industries. Yeah. Yeah,
because they are coming, they are like, getting the whole banana. So like, 20 still images, a few minutes of animation, and on, and it keeps rolling. So
wow, dude. So they're basically designing a new office, and the job is come up with the overall. Do they give you the floor plans and go, this is where each office is, or they go like, here's?
It depends. They come on various stages, and we often accompany them across the entire process. So it can start with very conceptual stage, when we also give some support in design. We are doing some iterations sometimes. Then there are other stages, like they need to have something to show to local authorities to have some agreements, and then of course there are these marketing stages when they want to lease the space, so it needs to be like this final candy image that they are selling.
Interesting.
So sometimes the project lasts even 2-3 years. And they come and go, and it just changes all the time.
Whoa!
But it's nice because you are doing this pre-production work just once, and then just a few elements changes, and you can build them again and again.
Oh, interesting.
So that's pretty efficient, and when you have the optimized workflow, because these buildings often have the same material, the same set of materials that is repeating. So when you developed it once or twice, you can copy some solutions, and it can get pretty streamlined. So yeah, as I said, definitely least interesting, but the money maker.
So what would you say, by the way, is like the most time-consuming part of this production process, making one of these projects?
I would say waiting for them to make their minds, and because you get some 3D models, usually pretty messy, and then they come back and change some things, and sometimes you can replace it with an entire model, but it gets so messy in the end that you need to redo it from scratch.
So you mean like the files that you're getting are like DXF or DWG or something, and you're importing that?
It's like the better option. The worst option is straight from Rhino, which is transforming NURBS into mesh. It's total mess, and there are some workflows for it, but usually it's just plain mess, and you need to somehow deal with it. And if you deal with it once, it's okay, but it never ends with just this final draft they send. And it's also the decisive process is pretty wide. You have architect firm, developers, clients, and landscape team, some other little teams, and everyone feels the need to chip in.
Oh yeah, so, I've heard that. Right.
Yeah, the work itself is pretty straightforward afterwards, but at least
it's the changes, the feedback,
to understand what everybody needs, and to get that initial feedback when some teams that have never talked with each other are trying to get this communication upon our image. It's sometimes it's horror.
Right. Wow. Yeah, that's the...
by the way, I remember long time ago, way before this stage, I was working on one huge image, like it was supposed to be interactive wall, 35 meters wide, and the image had to have like 200,000 pixels on the wider angle. And it's like really rendered 200,000. Yeah, like it was combined. I had to render, of course, pieces because I couldn't render 200,000, and then seamlessly blend them. But what's funny is receiving first feedback after delivering 200,000 image, because it was like the entire landscape, cities, factories, fields, and like shit ton of details. And the first feedback I got was like a PDF file with this notifications icon, and I couldn't see anything apart from, just these icons everywhere. It's
no!
A few hundred nodes everywhere. I nearly died at the day.
I mean, that would take hours to just go through the notes, let alone act on them.
Really.
Oh my gosh. That's rough. Okay. So the feedback loop process, it's the intercommunication of human beings that's the weak point. It seems like.
Yeah, and at that stage, in this type of client, this first type of my client, the communication is pretty important. It's, as I said, it's not so much about quality, but about being able to communicate with the client.
Yeah.
And to give something extra, because they are also very stressed. Usually they have some, people above them they want to make good impression on, and it can get pretty stressful.
Yeah, they're taking a risk with you.
Type of
they
client,
want it to look good, and then you pull something out and they go, that's not what I asked for. I'm going to get fired if I produce this. Yeah.
Yeah, something like this.
Yeah, that's right.
And the second type of client we have is something totally opposite, because it's like this boutique architecture firm.
Okay, yeah.
That would like to have this top quality stuff, and it can get really tricky in Archviz, because in other fields you have a concrete floor and you can scatter some rubbish, and you can give this mossy leaking on the wall, and everything gets dirty, and it's easy to squeeze this detail. But in Archviz you need to be really subtle.
Yes.
And really insightful. You need to understand materials very well. So we are doing this stuff like even scattering single fluffs on the fabrics, trying to understand how wood is being sewn, so to get the proper grain of the wood, to understand in these office buildings, to understand how all those windows are assembled, so there is this under pressure, so there is this distortion reflection on each pane. So these are little things, but they add up to this feeling of luxurious product instead of this CGI feeling.
Well, this is actually an interesting question I wanted to ask. Do you use surface imperfections like smudges and things like that? Do you ever use those?
Yes, but it's important to keep them very subtle.
Yeah, right.
You don't want to have this grungy feeling on the reflection.
Yeah.
It needs to be barely visible.
Yeah.
I have even seen people doing stuff like, I don't know, you have like a white rustic wall and some terrazzo floor, and they have details like little drops of white paint next to this wall on this floor. So it's like when you're painting the wall, sometimes something drops and it stays for years because nobody noticed it. And,
no way. So
in this rendering, it's also like unnoticeable, but when you start picking in, you can see all those intricate details that somebody decided to put in, and it's like sometimes it's amazing.
That's crazy.
You might be the first person seeing it.
Yeah, that's right. So, but tell me then, like, what sort of client requests that sort of realism? Because I always thought these super realistic that look indistinguishable from photos is kind of overkill. Because I always thought, why would the client want it to look like a photograph? Like indistinguishable from a photograph as opposed to photorealistic. You know what I mean? Like why does a client want something that looks like a photo?
Most clients don't want it, at least don't want to pay for it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But there are some clients, like very boutique architects, that also find Archviz as sort of an art itself.
Okay.
And there is this story from Jakub Czech. Jakub Czech is one, I don't know if you
know
him.
I know him.
He's like, so we talked a few times, and he had this one project with Brazilian architect, and he spent like more than a year, more than entire year just working on one project. He traveled there. He did some photographs of the place because I think it existed already.
Okay.
And this architect seemed to be like indulged in the process of creating the digital spaces of this photo scanning, of being able to transform the feeling of the space into digital world. In the end, they even had this exhibition of Jakub's work that he did on this project. So this is something that this architect was paying for, the entire year, just to be able to have this artist for himself to translate the space he created into something digital. So this kind of mindset.
So it's basically, instead of hiring an architectural photographer to go to the built location and photograph it, because that's a whole, I remember reading a book on it, and like the planning involved of like the daytime, the light, and still things just get out of whack. But if you do it digitally,
I wouldn't say that it's like instead of, but in addition to. So so it's like not something made entirely for marketing purposes, but rather for process itself, that this architect wanted to have like profound connection with what he did, and he wanted this profound connection to be also reflected in the 3D work that Jakub did. At least this is how I understand it. But there are some clients that exhibit similar mindset.
Oh, interesting. That is cool. Okay. And sorry, for people who don't know his full name, what's his last name? Jakub
Czech. Cech.
No, that's not it. I'm trying to Google it as you're talking. I know the one you're talking about. I can't find their website. What's the website?
I don't know.
Okay. Oh, you know what? Sorry, I thought you were talking about Jakob Lindqvist. Jakob Lindqvist? What's his name? The other famous one.
Johannes Lindqvist.
Johannes.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
No, it's other guy, but he's also great.
Okay. I'll put links, by the way, in the description for anyone who wants to find out what names we're trying to pronounce, or I'm trying to. Awesome. All right. Well, let's jumping back to the topic of Arch. Well, still on it, but what would you say to a young, let's say somebody who's got basic 3D knowledge, if you were going to teach a course on Archviz, right? What would some of those foundational first handful of lessons look like if you were to teach a class for beginners?
Can we come back to this previous topic, because I didn't finish like the base of the client? And
sorry. Go ahead.
A bit messy.
Jumping around a bit. Go ahead.
Come back to it.
Go ahead. Continue on.
Yeah, of course. We'll talk about education a bit later.
Go ahead.
So we had like this big studio, mass-produced renderings, these boutique clients, and the first type of clients that come to me, and I think it's most interesting, are people looking for these personally designed, curated, offered spaces. This type of, these houses that you mentioned.
Yes. Yep.
These were made as personal projects, but this is the similar type of work. So it's basically like creating a virtual architecture.
Okay.
And what I mean by it is like spaces that are not supposed to build. So we are not anymore accompanying any architectural process that ends up with building, like creating the building, but we are creating the space to exist in digitally. as it can be the backdrop for advertisement. It can be something that is used in games. It can be just the space that you can experience. And,
really? I didn't know that was a type of project.
Yes.
Wait, so it's just a 3D building that it's never going to be lived or seen in person because it's not going to be built. It's just a digital model.
Yeah, it's just the model that it can evoke some emotions.
Okay.
Like you remember Avatar movie, and people were really emotional after watching it, that even some people got depressed that they cannot participate in the world.
Yeah.
And it's like this kind of stuff that we want to show something that is evoking some emotions, and sometimes it has other purposes, like some marketing purposes, showcasing some products, like this boundary office created the spaces just for Mercedes commercials. So how people are using some nice modern architecture as backdrop, like Calatrava stuff or something, and it can get overused quickly because there is limited there are limited resources, limited amount of buildings they can use. So using something totally curated, digital, something made especially for this project is like brand new luxury. And
I'm not following. I'm sorry. I got to jump in. Hang on. So this is for an advertisement. There's only so many.
Like for everything, advertisement, movies. So people, of course, there is like the base of existing buildings, like for example, Calatrava buildings in Valencia, and is being used in many movies like Westworld series and something. And maybe people that are not so accustomed to it can buy it again and again, but soon it becomes repeatable. I've seen it in some movies already. So
what did you say? Calatrava?
Calatrava, Santiago Calatrava. He's a popular architect. Catrava.
Calatrava.
Spanish architect, Milwaukee Arts Center, I guess. It's this train station in New York at the moment is popular, very Instagrammable.
Oh, right. But this Calatrava makes real buildings.
Yes, real buildings, but the goal here and the message here is that there is more demand on this kind of unique modern backdrops than there is a supply. So they're being repeated again and again in movies, in advertisements.
Okay.
And if you are able to create them digitally, especially for the product, something totally curated, this is like this kind of brand new luxury for the brands to be able to to own the space, the IP of the space.
I got it. So basically, like the Burj Khalifa, like we've all seen it. It's put in high-rise shots of like planes or cars or something like that, and it's been used so often that it's not unique enough anymore. That people want their own.
I mean, it's iconic,
equivalent.
And it's too iconic sometimes too iconic for the brand, because you instantly know they are showing Burj Khalifa. So if they don't want to be associated with Dubai or everything associated with it, but they want to have the brand associated and accompanied with something modern that is not so obvious. They cannot use it. They need to find something else or just create digitally something like just for
Mercedes might go build us our own tunnel with like lights and windows and things or something, or a museum looking floor completely digitally that we can use in commercials and still shots that just have cool reflections, and as an example. Is that right?
Yeah, that's like very simple. Usually it's more intricate. It's, to carry some emotions. Like it's like you want to create some space that could exist outside this commercial. So it's not only the backdrop, like the tunnel or something. For example, this boundary project that they have Mercedes on, it was like this desert house.
This is the Boundary studio?
Very modern. Sorry?
Are you talking about the Boundary in London? The studio?
Yeah, Boundary
Okay.
Studio. I don't know if you're able to find it at the moment. It's like a few years old.
Okay.
Maybe not the project they are featuring, but yeah, it's like this, something like this. And also in movies, of course, it has long precedence. For example, North by Northwest by Hitchcock. They had this entire house, Van Damme house, as something that doesn't exist in reality. They had it matte painted and kit bashed interiors.
Wow.
So they were kind of offering the space that just served as the statement in the movie. And similar with this Parasite movie, they CG they created in CG the entire house just to serve for the purpose of the story. So it's this kind of spaces that are curated for some reasons other than being built.
I see. This is crazy. I mean, now that you say it, you see commercials where they've got a building that it clearly doesn't exist, but it looks cool. Now I know what you're talking about. But does this have a category of, is this called something like unbuilt or, I don't know.
I don't know. I call it virtual architecture, but
virtual architecture.
I don't know.
That's probably a good term for it.
It's
fictional architecture.
It's something that something really new, I would say, and it doesn't have a name
Metaverse architecture.
Yeah, Metaverse is another step, because you would be able to create spaces that are just created to be owned and experienced without any particular other reason.
Got it.
And
so
and it's people might need it because when I am creating personal projects of houses, some people are really crazy just to being able to book the night there, and they don't recognize they are just digital, and they are crazy getting my PayPal numbers and sending me random amounts of money just to be able to book the night, and I need to then
talk them out
of it.
So even though it wasn't even listed as a place you could stay at, they're still sending you money, hoping that you'll let them in?
Yeah, some people are really crazy about it.
Oh, dude, that's wild. That is crazy. Dude, but the one, the Hoodoo House, is it that one? Is that the one where you get the most, the one in the desert? Is that the one where you get the most requests?
The most requests I got for these cabins.
Oh, the cabins. Oh yes, the northern wisps.
Yeah, it was widely covered, and it's already more than 4 years old. But I remember I even got some requests from Christian communities in the United States. So very, very random stuff.
What wanting to have a church meeting there or something?
Yeah, that kind of stuff, and there's also one woman from Australia that also had wild plans about it, and sometimes you feel like this Tom Hanks on the bench, and life is like the box of chocolates when these random things come along.
Dude, that is crazy. Wow. I mean, that was... Yeah, I forgot you did that one. That tent scene, that's crazy. That was also
but
Megascans promoted that pretty heavily too, didn't they?
Yeah, it was like the beginning of Megascans being popular and public, and before that, Megascans were pretty expensive. I would say, at least at that point for me. But then I remember got for it like, I don't know, 10,000 credits or something like this. So for a brief time, it was like, being able to get everything. But then soon they become like widely available for low rates, and then even for free in Unreal. So they are now mainstream, and back then it was like something new, something pretty exclusive.
Yeah, true.
But they promoted it, so it was nice. It was used in some of their promotional materials. But to sum up, I think this third category of clients, these curated spaces, it's like kind of a future, because over categories, there are many fields that are going to be automated, and architects are going to do them in-house, especially when the software is getting easier. They have Landscape to work with Revit and that kind of stuff. Of course, they're doing it already at the time, but I think in the future they will be able to do most of the process in-house. So it's the future of these fields. It's not so certain, but the need for something curated, something designed, something new, and also it requires a lot of creativity. I think this area is going to kind of explode, especially with Metaverse and that kind of stuff coming.
A thrilling conversation, no doubt, with Bartosz, but before we get back to that discussion, architectural artists, if you're listening, you need artists. And there are some materials that you can't find anywhere, right? Like terrazzo, or this Venetian tile, or a specific type of marble. That is where Poliigon comes in. Poliigon is an asset library designed for architectural visualization. So we've just come out with a huge library of fabric scans from Twinbrew, which is an upholstery and fabric manufacturer based out of Belgium. And we adopted 426 of their fabrics, which are digital twins of real fabrics that you can actually buy. So that means you can create a visualization for an interior, a client who's got like curtains over the windows, and you can actually choose fabric which the client can actually buy. That's what this new term digital twins is all about. So we've kicked it off with 426 of their fabrics. We've also recently come out with a whole bunch of different ceramic tiles, wicker, ground textures. There's a whole bunch. Basically every week at Poliigon we've got a new batch of assets, generally speaking. There's a lot on the way as well, so do check it out. That's Poliigon, Poliigon, for all of your asset needs. And now, back to the interview. Can we talk a little bit about the Metaverse? What's your thoughts on the Metaverse? Is it going to be this 3D world that we all live in someday, or is it overhyped?
It's definitely going to be something. Maybe not something that we're experiencing right now, because it's often very gimmicky. But I think that generally blockchain and being able to create dynamic art, something that changes in the time, dynamic spaces, owning it, and especially when ways of experiencing it. So VR stuff and all of it is going to skip next generations. Then it's going to be something that it will become important, I guess.
Yeah.
It's hard to predict what will be the. I don't know if it's going to be some end goal here, but there are a lot of big architectural firms already feel the blood, and it's like Zaha Hadid and over. They have teams dedicated for conceptualizing metaverse and architecture in metaverse. So it's already happening.
No way. That's crazy.
It's just
Zahad. That's the very famous architecture firm, and they're making spaces for the metaverse. Sort of what we were talking about before, virtual architecture.
Yes, I think they basically want to stay in avant-garde of this movement. So they have a lot of speeches on metaverse. They have team that is kind of conceptualizing virtual use of architecture, and you can see it when you are shuffling these conferences. It's like emerging more and more often all the time, but at the moment it's hard to pinpoint it yet, but it's somewhere definitely.
Yeah, it's like like if you went back to the 90s, you would have heard the buzzword being the internet, right? And email, and how one day you'll be able to book a plane flight through the internet. And people laughed and was like, are you kidding me? You can barely load one image. How, and it's true. Like the people that hyped it back then, that said that we're just on the cusp of this thing that's going to explode, were, would you say, they were overemphasizing the short-term games and under estimating the long-term games. Because the technology has to improve, web protocols, encryption, scalable servers, all of that tech wasn't there to make the ability to buy a plane ticket possible yet. Like entering a credit card into the internet was just like the riskiest thing. It took a couple of decades, or maybe just one decade, before you could really do it solidly. And in a way, it's like people that are promoting the metaverse today as like, we're all going to go digital. And it's like, well, first of all, most people not only don't own a VR headset, most people have never used one. And those that have didn't really enjoy it. Maximum you can really scale is get about 24 people in the same sort of scene, far from being this online population that we're all going to live in. So this, there are a whole number of technical hurdles that need to be overcome before we can get there. But as you say, for sure, it's going somewhere, and it's very likely that you will get to this space where the virtual world is more important than the real world. Many people will debate that, but I think there's some merit to it, especially considering most of us live on social media, and social media sucks. It's not that crazy to imagine a fully 3D world. I don't know. But yeah, it's too early. It's too early.
It's too early, and it's interesting consideration how you experience this space, because the movement is different in VR than in real life. Mm-hmm. So it's not exactly architecture, because architecture is made for the interface that your body is, but it's like halfway between architecture and level design, especially with this technology. It can also change when the technology changes. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty interesting to think about it, how you experience it. But it's definitely the wave that people will need to ride in the future.
Yeah,
willingly or not. And the other thing is all the AI stuff. And so I think like in 5 years, people will need to cooperate with AI doing things, because it's hard to compete with it. So the sooner you adapt, the better. Yeah.
I mean, we're thinking about it.
So you can already see like digital painters doing things upon AI iterations, and it's interesting, and I think people will need to learn how to do it. Also in 3D, I've seen like this auto conference, and they were like talking about neural objects in 3D, which is like something that is not mesh, not volume object, but something totally different. That's
really?
Like
I gotta find that.
Yeah.
Well,
I didn't understand it, but
a neural object.
Yes.
Mural object. I gotta remember to.
I don't know if you will find it just by writing this phrase, but it was in this conference by this Octane creators, and it was pretty interesting.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, like I mean, we're thinking about it like Poliigon. Like, what would be a threat to Poliigon? It's like, well, if an AI came out and you could just like type in computer desk and you would get a generated computer desk, that's not good, right? Well, it's great for consumers, great for everybody, great for artists, and it would be a superior solution.
There was this software for Unreal, this add-on for Unreal, Promethean AI. It's out already, but the promise was that, of course, it's like way smaller than it was promised, but the promise was that you can, with just the vocal interface, by saying Unreal, make me the desk with computer or something like this, and then guiding it, you can get whatever you really need. At least it's like AI powered asset manager, which is nice. Yeah. Because it's hard to manage your assets, and it could also be the future for AI to be able to manage all the assets available in the internet, connect them with basic stuff like color, style, price tag, producer, reseller. So theoretically, it could be pretty automated to create interiors with shopping lists for people in the future. Just run entirely by AI without any Archviz artists, architects, interior architects, and that kind of stuff. At least on this basic level.
Meaning like you could give type basic, or you could
basic dimensions.
Talk. Oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, you have the room, for example, kitchen. You want to make a new kitchen, so you give on the website the basic dimensions. Where is the window? You have like 10 styles that are actually at the moment popular on Pinterest to choose from, and then neural network is just choosing assets, connecting with shopping lists in your area, and you get like a few iterations to choose from, because it's pretty easy process to get all this basic functionality for the kitchen. And most of this interior concentrated Archviz artists at the moment are mostly dragging and dropping stuff from 3D Sky, so it's like something that be pretty easy to write as algorithms. And there are already, I knew like 2 companies from Poland that had this creation of interiors pretty automated by scripts in Rhino, I think. So they are like charging really low rates for doing them, because they can produce thousands of them.
Wow.
So it's already happening.
Yeah, for sure it will get there. It's I definitely I saw Promethean AI. It wasn't that I still don't really know what it actually delivers on, because I don't know. Is it even available to public, or is it still a beta or something?
I think you can at the moment you can download it.
Okay. Yeah.
I have checked it a few days ago, and it looked like something already available.
Yeah.
But I remember watching it like 4 years ago, and the promise was really great. Like, you could imagine things that could happen if you get this kind of software that understands the assets you have. And can use it according to what you are saying. So
yeah,
it will happen, but not yet.
Yeah, it's sort of like you could undersell it and you could oversell it very easily in both cases. Like when people in like the 70s were talking about, in the year 2000 everyone will have their own robot that that makes you dinner, that cleans the house, and it's like, I was oversold, and in a way I feel like people are talking about AI as like this, in the future no artist is ever required, and you just show me kitchens, and It designs a kitchen that is just flawless and requires no changes, and you're just fine with it. Is that gonna happen? I don't know.
It's impossible to predict, but I think it will be necessary to just work along with AI.
Yes.
And,
yes.
Because it will have benefits that you are not able to as a human.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Have, and you will be out of a competition if you don't want to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like I think it was 2007 or 97? Kasparov was defeated by the computer chess player for the first time. And people thought this was like the end of chess because, wow, a computer can do it better than a human player. But what actually happened was the best players learned how to use the AI chess program and when to change its moves. So today, the best 7 players or something will work with an AI software, with another person who's also using AI computer chess, and will know when to break the rules or break the pattern. And that will basically, a human AI with AI will defeat an AI only solution, because a human has context and can make decisions based on things that the other AI alone will not be able to understand. I'm talking about it like I understand it, but I don't. I imagine a similar thing with art, you know? AI by itself will be beaten by AI
people
with
don't
an
want to
artist.
people don't want to be replaced by AI, so the same way they pay more for like handcrafted chair or something like this, they will be willing to pay for handcrafted art. And one problem might be the economy. If like 90% of product is created by AI, and which is owned by some corporation, the thing is how you will redistribute this money. So things like this base income and stuff comes to life then, but it's like consideration for economists than us. But it will definitely change a lot of stuff, but our industry is already like pretty young and it's changing all the time. So it's, I think, just important to remember that what you are doing now probably won't be the same in a few years, and it's okay. You just need to
Don't
change
resist
accordingly.
Yeah.
Like mutability is important asset.
Yeah, definitely. I think that it is a huge mistake to just resist it, or to downplay it also as well. Was it like The Art of War explains that? It's like the biggest mistake you can make is to underestimate your opponent. It's like you don't want to pretend that AI just it's never as good as what I can do, but at the same time you don't also want to like give up and go like there's no point, I'm out. Because I have heard people say that. Like I send out like a newsletter, and there are a lot of beginners. Every time I talk about AI, they go like, what's the point in me learning 3D if I'm not gonna be able to have a job because the computer program can do it better than I could or something. Just it can be taken as a something very negative that will just destroy your career, but I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, I also don't think that's the case, but definitely the education needs to change. Like it's not like you are learning one skill set and wait to be employed. It's getting a bit different and it's hard to predict, but it changes on all levels. So education also needs to adapt, and you need to be able to learn all those skills, like being able to just search internet to find to learn yourself stuff, and of course it's just the tip of the iceberg, but It's no Prussian school anymore. It's something new, and education is usually way behind, years behind. So people educated the old style, old ways are entering this market, and they are afraid because the things that they just learned are obsolete.
But to be fair, the things that as they were learning them, they were already obsolete. A lot of schools' education is not great. On that topic, then, let's say you were to create your own school for Archviz. And you've got somebody who's got like, a range of like basic to intermediate 3D knowledge, and you were to create a training curriculum to become a good Archviz artist, what would that curriculum sort of look like, or some of the first handful of sessions look like?
That's a difficult question, because at the moment I am just creating one training, and like thinking about the entire curriculum of education is pretty difficult. But I would say that learning like fundamentals is pretty important, because they don't change. Our perception of things doesn't change. Like composition, color, scale, this kind of stuff, it's constant and will be in the future. So
what are some good resources to learn those, by the way? Sorry to jump in.
It's like bits here and there. That's why we are creating our blog, The Common Point, because we want to kind of give our thoughts on the topic. And we are also including a lot of researching, like connecting dots between various fields, like some physics, some art, and that's the kind of stuff to have something curated just for Archviz. Because many questions are unanswered, and artists just learn them to do them naturally, but it's hard to articulate them, hard to talk about them. So that's what we want to bypass. But coming back to these fundamentals, also I think it's like training your eye, because it's important to be able to establish this internal language with yourself, to be able in the future to consume art, to analyze art, to see what are good points and bad points of the image. Because a lot of people, even advanced people, cannot do it well, and usually people tend to quickly come into details instead of analyzing major things in the image, and they will say like the image is good because the grass is realistic, which can be a strong point, but it sometimes the image has all over problems, and they can feel that it has some problems, but they cannot find the solution. They trying to incorporate some arbitrary decisions, and it's important to learn this process of thinking about art. And also the mindset and personality is important. And sometimes when we are trying to hire people at the moment, the first thing we are looking for is like this personality. And because if a person is willing to learn and open-minded and like self-sufficient, that this person won't whine that he cannot do something and then please help me. I mean, helping is of course fine, especially when working in a team, but this ability for a person to have this own initiative, being able to solve some problems, bring something new to the table is important. And the knowledge and technical stuff will come after when you have this skill set, but this mindset is like something that will differentiate you from the others, I think.
Got it.
And as for the common point, it's like something that's just the beginning of this platform for us.
And sorry, to maybe some context for the listener, the Common Point is literally thecommonpoint.com, and it's a would you call it a blog, an informational resource written by yourself and someone else?
It's kind of a blog at the moment, but I can tell you a bit more about it because after many years of working alone, and it was like, I don't know, 7-8 years just working alone, and I found it pretty good, and I had this preconception that the person alone can do pretty much anything. Like, there are short movies, there are games that like individual artists make. So, and the ceiling for the individual artist is pretty high in terms of what he can earn, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So I started working on my short movie a few years ago, which I didn't finish, of course. Like everybody has this story of a movie that he didn't finish. And,
Yep.
But then COVID came, and I decided to kind of reinvent myself, and I started to work with Artur Tamioła, which has totally different background that I have. Yes. So he has more of this IT working agency, advertisement, cinema, art direction background. So when we started to talk, it soon turned out that things that are natural for me, like forming space, design, etc., are something that he cannot easily comprehend, and vice versa. Things that were natural for him were difficult for me. So there was this kind of creative tension, and we decided to kind of thrive on it and create project together, which was like another short movie.
Okay.
Something that will take some elements from this older movie, but we'll also be able to create the training about the entire animation pipeline based on this second movie. And of course, the second movie also didn't work.
Yep,
because it was way too much work. I mean, maybe we could create it, but creating the training upon it is like twice the work that just creating the movie. So it didn't work, and we decided to scale down. So for a year, we are writing a blog, and we turned more to this Archviz community, which is our natural community. So we decided to take one topic per month and try to get to the core of the problem and explain it. So things like memory colors, perception, sky color, greenery color, or there's this article about creating and understanding trees and that kind of stuff that could be useful in Archviz. That was also fun for us. And that's what we created for a year. Then now we are kind of in this hiatus because we are working on our training that is like focused on perception of color in commercial and cinematic architectural exterior, something like this. So, which is like this smaller chunk of knowledge, but something that we could handle parallel to our commercial work, and I think something that we have like a lot of things to say that weren't said yet, something fresh that people could use. So that's our goal for it.
There's definitely content like that. What makes a perfect CG tree, I thought was a great article that that hasn't really been discussed before, which is fantastic.
In the long run, it's our plan to. Yeah, because like we are mid-30s, so it's getting hard with like constant day-to-day production. It can get hectic. So in the long run, it's our plan to step down from production and focus more on sharing the experience and getting into education, something that we can have our own pace in. And it's also that me and Artur were really involved into creating personal projects. And this is sort of a personal project 2.0 because we are doing of course, architecture space that we will to do, but we're also creating this business around it, this educational materials. So it has another additional meaning.
That's awesome. What's the long-term monetization strategy of the Common Point?
So yeah, of course, it's perfectly scalable digital product. So the more we sell, the more we earn. And we'll see. We are pretty new to it, and it will be our third training. So I expect that we might not earn too much money of it, and we will adapt later. But of course, there are groups of interest, Chinese artists, which we're at one point we're approached by this some of these Chinese websites, and they have user base of 3 million artists or something like this. So the effect of scale is mind blowing there, and of course it's hard to get there, but definitely we'll get the Chinese translation of this training because it's something worth trying.
Wow, that's cool, man. It's exciting. Yeah, I definitely recommend it to everyone. thecommonpoint.com. Yeah.
Yeah, the only problem is that creating the course is taking so much time because we are creating this scene from scratch that we will be sharing. So we need to do all the photogrammetry, textures, modeling on our own. And with normal personal projects, it's you are creating the image for a few days. It's instant dopamine hit. You are publishing it, and the wheel keeps rolling. And now this process is so long, and it can be get really exhausting. But we are closer to the end than the beginning at the moment. So
that's cool, man. That's awesome. Excited for it. I'll definitely keep my eye on it.
Yeah, cool. I hope it will be worth it.
Awesome. Cool. Well, just trying to think what areas to discuss. I guess one area, sort of jumping back into sort of the nitty gritty of day-to-day life, but how do you approach a typical Archviz project? And let's, to make it simple, a virtual space, one where you have no plans from a client. It's a personal piece. You just want to make a nice looking series of images. Where does that start from idea phase and then to the final thing? If you could maybe walk through the process.
Okay, so it's actually pretty complex because it's a question how to conceive things that have no precedence, out of nothing.
Yep.
And I think that's something that architecture studies help with, because you get this kind of tool set of conceptualizing things. So there are a few ways. One thing is that you should do the typology of solutions. Of course, you are starting with, for example, a cube, a sphere, or something like this, just to simplify.
Okay.
And then you have another layer of solutions, and you are just sketching it all out, just to be conscious of what you are choosing between.
Yeah.
And it's way easier to do it this way, organized way, than just come up with some random ideas.
Okay.
So that's one helpful thing. The second thing with this kind of doing something out of nothing is trying to take the inspiration from the real world and somehow distort it. There are these artworks of spaceships made out of some basic tools like toothbrush or something. Someone takes the photo of the toothbrush and redrawing it into a spaceship.
Oh, yeah.
This is something like this. But
you could do something similar with a house.
To be this
Take
trivial,
a water bottle and make a building.
This way, you need to kind of learn this way of thinking to take the inspiration that's really far-fetched for what you are doing. And I think this like the third approach, which is coming to life at the moment, is to let AI iterate for you. Like, there are because it's so random that it will produce effects that can be pretty abstract, and they are not based. They are based, but of course, what you are imagining is also based on what you experienced, and AI has like way wider base for iterating this stuff. So you are getting something brand new for yourself, and you can add another layer of understanding to it and build something.
Mm-hmm.
So
what AI tools can be helpful for this?
There is this AI tool, Midjourney, probably. It's pretty new now. It's beta. It's like there are some already arts on Artstation that are produced based on it. But basically anything that
what's it called? Midjourney. That's right.
Midjourney. Basically any app that is translating text to some image or just giving you something pretty random as an image according to some styles. There is a lot of stuff like this, and if you have like open mind and can build upon it, it's something that could be useful for you. So that's obviously this abstract first phase, but then there is a lot of working with client, with references, the things he likes. And fortunately, most of this type of clients really come to you as an artist because they like what you do and they appreciate your way of thinking. So they won't be very picky with feedback, and they will usually like what you are doing. And that's very fortunate because if there is a clash of interest, the clash of imagination on this stage, it's really difficult to marry it and have some compromise. But these are pretty individual projects, and it's hard to find some generalization here.
Okay. Yeah.
But and with normal commercial work, it's usually like simple story. The client comes with a briefing with references and with some kind of model. Usually it's like half detailed, so they might know how the building will look like. Not every time, but usually, but they don't care for landscape or something like this. So you need to give your input in these areas, which can be freeing because you're able to arrange the space the way it looks the best, but it can be also pretty consuming and exhausting because you need to somehow become landscape architect at that point or something else.
Right. So if they don't give the input, then it's up to you to come up with some ideas, maybe.
Yeah, and they usually don't have the input in many areas, so you need to kit-bar something, figure something out. You want to be efficient because it might be not something they really want to, so they will try to iterate on it. So you don't want to spend too much time on it at that point, but you need to have these qualities to be able to design something or at least copy something.
Yeah. Okay. And that was the conceptual side of the client work.
yeah, that was like the typical Archviz work, which and things that don't maybe are not considered that typical, but they come with pretty much every project. So you need to conceptualize things that client don't care so much about or have not yet idea about.
Right. Is it hard to know like what areas you have freedom in versus what you should do exactly as they said? Like, hey, that room is completely blank. Like, okay, I'll render it completely blank, or should I fill it with furniture? You know what I mean?
It's important to know your client. So the first job is always the hardest, and it's really useful to just stick to the clients for years, because when the time comes by, you start to understand them, and this cooperation becomes smoother. For example, the time when I was working with some event companies and sportswear brands, at the beginning were pretty hard, because you need to understand the like corporate guidelines, visual guidelines, and these are things sometimes they don't have them articulated by everybody in the company feels it. Because it might translate from like the graphic design to the space, and they will know something is off, but they find it hard to give the feedback. And once you understand how they work, how they create space and understand space, it becomes way easier, and the cooperation is way smoother. And so that's why I'm pretty reluctant at that moment to start new cooperations. It's very difficult, and
figuring
it
the other
requires
side
a lot
out.
more time, and it's just easier to go on and on with older clients when we understand each other, and it's just way smoother.
How do you find your first clients for the newbies out there that are like, that's great, but how do I get work?
It depends when you are newbie starting to find clients. I mean, it's if you are starting freelancing from the very beginning, it will be hard, and there is like no perfect solution. I would recommend, if you're able to, if you have like this local market, I would recommend to get employed at the beginning and learn the pipeline, learn the skills. And then you can, get some works after time and organically shift towards working fully freelance. And as for high profit clients, I think it's more the way of thinking that you let them find you than you are finding them. So you are creating this message, tailoring your message, creating this online presence, and the clients will find you eventually. But if you are deciding, like you are finishing university, have some basic skill set, but no relations, and you are starting the company, then it will be like the few year long grind, and it will be really difficult at that point. Like low rates and straight at the bottom where the competition is like the fiercest. I would definitely recommend to try to be employed at the beginning, which I wasn't, and it was difficult.
Interesting. Okay.
But I worked in architecture, so I also didn't start the company like being totally dependent on its success. I started slowly, like after hours I was working in architecture, and then after I was creating some visualization, and after I have seen that like my client base enlarged and I could do just this and earn my daily bread, I shifted. But I also didn't risk it all to start without any connections and without proper skill set.
Interesting. Okay, that makes sense. Right. I like what you said about tailoring a message in your portfolio to get the big brands, the big studios.
Yeah, like personal projects. And also, I think it's important for people to understand that there is like the different mindset behind creating personal projects for the beginner and for the advanced artist, because like the expert will create personal projects just to vent off after work, to have something relaxing, and it doesn't serve the purpose of getting new work. And for the beginner, the personal project is like one thing is like the strategy of learning new things, and the second thing is like this tailoring message for creating your portfolio for people to see you. And you can be really consistent here and use it. Like, for example, you can create just night scenes or just luxury kitchens, and there is a chance that if you are consistent, you will finally get a job in this field, because you will get recognizable as the guy from luxury kitchens or something like this. Right. If you are not consistent, I have never been, it's like all the place, and it's way more work to get recognizable.
Oh, sorry, say that again. I missed that part.
So if you are not consistent with what you are showing, and I am the example, it will take you much more works, many more years to get recognizable as something valuable for projects which are very specific.
And you're talking about looking at your portfolio on, say, Behance or Artstation.
Yes, like your online presence.
Right. You've got your houses, and then you've got your upside down spaceman, and then you've got
like sci-fi. For me, it's like similar stuff because it's all about space, but of course for followers it's like something totally different. And also in the past I worked in like advertisement, game cinematics, that kind of stuff. So things that I was showing were like totally random.
Yeah. It definitely does make it easier. Like, speaking from the point of view of people of Poliigon's hired and gone through a hiring process with many artists in the past, it definitely makes it easier when you go to someone's portfolio and all they do is one thing. Like, all they do is like hard surface electronics or vehicles, right? Or characters or Archviz. It's when you open up someone's portfolio and they've got a mixed bag. And I guess most importantly, it's a mixed bag of mixed quality. That's when it's like, because you could have like one or two really great pieces within there. But if it's a mix, like, it shows that you're not really focused on what you're honing, what you're trying to improve on, and what sort of work you actually want. Because nobody wants to hire, a furniture modeler hoping they can model furniture, but then actually they're really much better at just hard surface or something else. So at least when they've got a clear portfolio of this is what I do, it's like, great. They're right for the role, or they will keep their resume or portfolio link for the future when we do want a hard surface guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend to be consistent, appear consistent, but I would also recommend not to focus on interiors if you're an Archviz artist, because it's like totally oversaturated.
Really?
And, we are looking people that can, it's like, because it's like also easy to enter fields, like low threshold to start creating interiors, especially in the Corona times. It's a lot of stuff out of the box, looking nice. And when we are looking for people being able to create more complex spaces, offices, campuses, something like this, it's it's like interiors everywhere.
Hang on, so it's harder to find work in interiors because there's not enough work but too many people doing it? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I would say that at least at the bottom of the market there is like total oversaturation in interiors.
Oversaturation in artists or in work?
In the supply. Yeah, so there is like much more supply than demand for interiors. And many people that are doing interiors, there is like not so much work, especially that these are interiors like typical house interiors. instead of commercial spaces. So if someone is starting and trying to find his niche of sort, I would recommend to go straight to commercial spaces. It can be, a bit intimidating because it's like bigger scale and optimizing, handling the files. But in the end, it's not so different. Just the other way of thinking of things, and it's like definitely the way to go if you want to find some job quickly.
Interesting. Okay, I had no idea. I thought it was the other way around, to be honest. I thought there was not a lot of Archviz work for exteriors. I thought there was much more for interiors.
Yeah, I'm also distinguishing between this residential and commercial.
Right. Residential interiors.
Because a lot of people are focused strictly residential and strictly interiors. So it's hard to tell whether there is more work in interiors or exteriors, but I see that the market is lacking way more people doing commercial exteriors. It's way harder to find people there.
Got it. Okay, that's good to know.
And I understand that also commercial exteriors, it's more like something requiring bigger studios than freelancers. Mm-hmm. So that's why people might tend to turn into residential, because there's something that individual client can come to them. Mm-hmm. But people working as freelancers should also understand that in market today, there are agencies and studios looking for individual people coming as a help, and in the end working as the freelancer exclusively. The studio can just outsource their work on maybe not hire people directly, but they can work long years with just one studio doing this kind of stuff. So.
Interesting. Okay.
They don't need to be on their own entirely.
Okay, right. Because you could be hired by a studio just as a contractor, but still get
there are
work.
Many various intermediaries apart from just end clients.
Okay, got it. The more you know. I didn't know that. I thought there was not actually that much work in commercial offices and spaces like that. I thought COVID wiped that out. Because a friend of mine actually has a company.
Yeah, maybe not everywhere.
Yeah, a friend of mine had a company that did. It was a very successful company based out in California, and they did offices for Airbnb, Uber, the big tech companies basically came to them, and COVID hit. They went bankrupt. They were a huge interior design firm with hundreds of people, and they just overnight, basically, the work just vanished because nobody was going back to the office. They're like, well, we're not building anymore, so no work. They fired everyone, basically. It's crazy.
Yeah, so it's interesting because we're also doing most of the project in California, and they are still building. They just kind of changed their point of interest. So They are not necessarily building offices for, I don't know, technological companies or something, but for example this biotech sector, or they are just changing the way of thinking about office. There is not some kind of space that you need to go, but you want to go. So it all changes, but they are still building, and there is still a lot of work in this sector, I would say.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Well, that's good to know. I had no idea. Awesome. Well, it's getting on a bit here. We should probably wrap it up. Is there anything that you wanted to discuss that we didn't get to?
I don't know. I skipped a lot of my story, but that's okay. I also think that we are starting to get this delay, so I think it's good point to wrap it up, because I'm afraid
the lag will come. For sure. Got it. For those listening, this is the second time Bartosz has come for an interview. The first time there was so many technical problems that it was we'll scrap it and do it again. But where can people find you?
Behance Artstation, Instagram. I'm everywhere under my own name, so it's not so difficult to find. And of course, the common point that we mentioned.
Awesome.
It's when we put like our stuff that it's not so individual, but yeah, this kind of places.
Awesome, great. Well, thanks so much, Bartosz. I'll put all the links to every your Instagram, Behance Artstation, and the common point. I'll put that in the description. And thanks so much for your time, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Awesome.